This workshop is part of the UGC funded, it's actually grant money given to the UGC awardee. Last year I was the recipient of one of the UGC awards, and as part of the award proposal, I had submitted a joint venture with my good friend Chandlaki, who was one time my colleague in orthopedic surgery. He's a fantastic surgeon, great teacher, and I couldn't think of anybody better than to collaborate with him. So this was done before the award was announced, and I'm so happy that after getting the award money, I'm honoring my commitment. I couldn't think of doing anything else, and I think this is fantastic. And Lucky Chan has then introduced me to Ian and his fantastic team, so I need to really thank Lucky, Ian, Darren, and Nick for putting up what I think is a fantastic program. This joint proposal was put up that because all of us, there isn't a critical mass of people moving on to either e-learning or in fact mobile learning technology. We need to know, is this applicable to our own fields? If so, how do we go about it? And that's the reason why we thought the best way would be to have some sharing across universities. So I'm so glad that this has come to fruition. We had the first workshop in the Chinese U, the second in the Hong Kong U, and we're going to have a few more in this academic year. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Ian and team to continue. Thank you very much. I sincerely appreciate it. Thank you, Ian.
So this is us, the Learning Pedagogical Support Unit. As you can see, we are few in number. There's 5 of us and 4 of us are here today. The remit of our university, and I guess this is why we can come and talk to you about teaching and learning and technologies, is our job is to put into practice or to put into operation the e-learning strategy for the University of Hong Kong. And as I said before, our strategy document is very good. It's very clearly directed in terms of what are we going to do to improve teaching and learning. And so to kick us off today, I'll talk to you a little bit about what can we do around learning experiences to try and make them engaging. There's this before, I guess before I got into the theory of it, and what is it that we mean when we say that our students are engaged? And it has something, I guess, to do with the amount of attention that they're paying to us, with how active they are in the classroom space. What is the degree of involvement that the students have in the classroom or in the teaching space, and how committed are they to their learning? And I think I was having conversations before, whilst we were waiting for lunch, and people were arriving. And I think, if you want to think about engagement and student motivation and what's happening, think about perhaps the difference. What's happening when you're in a lecture theatre with 300 students standing at the front, giving an hour delivery of PowerPoints? And have a think about attentiveness, activeness, how involved are they, how committed are they, and what do we actually know when we're doing that? If we're lecturing to 200 students, what do we actually know about the degree of engagement that we're getting? To try and give you another concrete example, if we flip that over then into small group activities with designed learning in which students are, for example, working through cases with a teacher present and a ratio of maybe 1 to 10 or 1 to 15, what do we know about how actively involved they are, about the engagement in terms of the commitment, in terms of what they're achieving? So that would give you maybe kind of polar opposites to try and put what I'm talking about into a context. There's the but. Colloquial understandings are all well and good, but I think what we need to do, and this is kind of the heart of instructional design, put your hands up if you're familiar with instructional design as an idea. Okay, so I'll give you a little bit of an explanation. Where I've worked before, Australia and New Zealand, the role of an instructional designer is a very well recognised one within universities. They're highly valued, they're very well paid. What they do is have a very thorough understanding of teaching and learning theory and a very good technological skill set so that they can bring these two things together. What do instructional designers do? They design instruction. So they sit down with the teachers and they'll work through a particular instructional design model, and what they will try and do is translate what's been happening with teaching and learning traditionally into something that's more robust pedagogically and makes the best use of the technologies that are around. I found that in Hong Kong quite interesting because instructional designers are few and far between. And it doesn't seem to be a term here that's really embedded in the sort of teaching and learning culture. But that's what they do, and it's important to understand that, because what I would say to you, whether you have a formal instructional designer or whether you're thinking about going about doing this on your own, there needs to be some systematic approach to making the changes that you're making in your teaching. It's not an ad hoc process. So let's say on the basis of the presentation today that what we're just thinking about is we have a problem with student engagement. Okay? And you could go back to my first example, which is I've got a massively large class with 200 plus students, and I actually have no real idea whether they are engaged. And I've got some inkling that probably the lecture as a format of delivering teaching is not the most effective way to engage students. And we kind of know this from cognitive psychology. So, if I were going to go about doing this as an instructional designer, and this is where I started off about 7 or 8 years ago, I'd be baselining my problem and I'd say, well, the issue here is either I don't know what the level of engagement is, and or I can really sense actually it's not good enough. I need to kind of create a different teaching and learning experience in which my students are going to be more engaged. There are multiple, I guess, theoretical models out there, different ways to approach what you're doing, and this is where instructional designers become highly valued because they know the majority of them. To pick one today, let's say that we're going to have a think about a community of inquiry. Starting off with Garrison, Anderson and Archer, and it's gone, this model is still being, I guess, revised and still theorized and researched. What it says essentially is that a worthwhile educational experience is located within a community of inquiry. And in this model you can conceive of the students and the teachers as both being present. This gives you a way, I think, to break up and to start thinking about your teaching and learning. So, go back to my large lecture scenario. I think there's an engagement problem. I can have a think about this model of the community of inquiry in which my students can be present in, let's say, 2 different ways. One is they can be cognitively present. Now these terms are not, what is the word that I want? They're not unproblematic. If I say to you I want the students to be cognitively present, in other words, I want them engaged intellectually, there is a whole host of ways in which that can play out. Okay? Depending on your subject area, depending on the different activities that you're designing for your students, depending on the media that you use. So I'm not giving you the definitive answer today, I'm giving you a relatively straightforward model which hopefully you can go away and think about. But certainly in terms of engagement, one of the things that we need that is essential or necessary is cognitive presence. Okay? We want our students to be engaged cognitively with the content, and if you think about Bloom's taxonomy, I guess, we don't just want them engaged at that low level of understanding, we want them really engaged at the level of application, synthesis, critiquing, all of these kinds of things. So cognitive presence is one way to think about it. You go back to the lecture scenario and you think, to what degree are my students cognitively present if I'm standing up and delivering a 1-hour lecture with PowerPoints in which all of the points that I'm making are actually on there? To what extent are my students really connecting with what I'm saying? I'm not down on the lecture per se. You can deliver a very, very good lecture. But what that requires is to design for cognitive presence, not standing for 1 hour and simply delivering verbatim. Okay? So there's an issue of cognitive presence. The one of social presence as well, this is interesting, and again it's not non-problematic. The extent to which students present themselves as real people in a community of inquiry. Hands up if you have an idea what presenting yourself as real would mean. No? I was hoping someone knew, because I don't. There you go, thank you. What is to present yourself as real as a student?
You are participating in the community, you are, you make, contribute to either decisions, or you are part of the subject, part of a lot of things.
Yeah.
And there's exchange, so the use of exchanges builds up and others contribute.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. It's the extent to which you're there as an individual, and a component of this, I guess, is the extent to which you're contributing to any and all activities, the extent to which you're interacting with your peers. One of the areas that really interests me, I guess, around this, and I don't think enough is done on it, our students are not in little cognitive vessels, right? They actually come with a whole range of attitudes and emotions and values and beliefs. And these, I guess, should come into play to the extent that the students are socially present. Okay? I'm not going to go really deeply into theory, but knowledge is not a thing out there sitting there that people take on board and then repeat back to us. So if there's a cognitive element to it, they're connecting with the content socially, they're genuinely present, connecting with one another, and to the extent they're doing that, they're being exposed to multiple perspectives and challenged. Again, I know I'm setting up a very easy dichotomy. Go back to the lecture or think about the small group. Which of these is going to be more effective as an engaging learning experience for students? Thank you, Nikki. Yep, back. Excellent. Now this is the one I think today that, not that you should focus on, but this is why you're here, I think. The third form of presence in this kind of community of inquiry model is teaching presence. You think about the way in which you're present as a teacher. You, if you sit here today, I guess, and you go through and you are stimulated by some of the ideas that you hear, you're going to go away and to some extent, you're going to perhaps look and redesign your teaching experience. That's the fundamental role of the teacher. That is what you're doing, and in doing that, you're trying to get your students to cognitively engage and to socially engage. So it's a big role of the teacher. If you think about e-learning and I guess teaching in general, there's actually a huge time commitment needs to be put into designing these kind of engaging learning experiences. Again, I know it'll sound like I'm down on lecturing, I'm not. The most straightforward and quickest way to deliver knowledge is to do the lecture. The much more time-consuming way is to think about an entirely different model. So for example, we've just had a professor of medicine who's been teaching for a lot of years who's flipped his classroom round. So he's there at 7 o'clock at night with Darren, who seems to have disappeared. 7 o'clock at night with Darren, recording these lectures at the end of the day, and then thinking about what is it he's going to do in the classroom that's different from what he was doing before. So there is kind of upfront and time commitment here, but the rewards are in terms, I think, of the quality of teaching and learning. The other main way in which a teacher is going to be present is, like I am now, I am standing here. Okay? The teacher will be physically present or virtually present and facilitating the learning as it occurs. Teaching presence is necessary for engaging and motivating students. I think this is true for all but the most self-motivated students. Now, here's the issue, I think. I know this is a 2004 report, but it's a seminal report on e-learning, what happened to it and why. It's called Thwarted Innovation. And one of the key lessons, they looked at, I think, 14 or 16 institutions in the States in which the result of the e-learning boom, this was early 2000, when it was held that e-learning was going to revolutionize teaching and learning, was essentially that everybody ended up putting up PowerPoints. That still remains predominantly the case with the learning management system. And when they looked at it and they said, why, what went wrong? What went wrong was people didn't change the way that they taught. So if there's a natural consequence, I think, of following the lecture tutorial model to using the LMS to put up PowerPoint slides and handouts. It's only when one really sits back and has a think about what is it that I'm doing with my teaching, that the technologies open themselves up and begin to appear useful in new and different ways. So, how? I'm going to give you, I'm going to have to rush. I'm going to give you a very straightforward model. This is an internationally validated model. So if all you take away today, I guess, in terms of the underpinning theory, is the aspects of this model to start thinking about your teaching and learning situation, that would, I think, be a good thing. So the ARCS model, how to gain learner attention. Simply by the use of media, right? We know again from cognitive, people get bored very, very quickly. If they're doing everything in a text-based format and they've got pages and pages on Moodle, they're not going to be particularly interested or engaged. what technologies offer us these days is multiple ways to deliver the same content or to bring students to the same point of understanding. Doing things like introducing incongruity or conflict through the use of these different media is going to make students stop and think. Variations in the learning environment. So again, if those of you who are Moodle will know the term the scroll of death. Are you familiar with that? So you get the Moodle front page and you can go down for about 5 minutes scrolling because all people have done is put PowerPoints and text on it. Variations in the learning environment, take use of different media in there, taking them to different pages, taking them outside of the learning environment so that they have to do something different. I really like this one about arousing curiosity by introducing mystery, unresolved problems and techniques to stimulate inquiry. That if we were thinking about, for example, flipping the classroom, outside we can give a whole load of video vignettes, we can send students off to look at different resources on the web. But all of this can be done around the idea that the students have to come into the classroom with a problem. And so all of the pre-learning is geared towards them coming in and answering the problem in terms of what they've learned outside. And there is your teaching presence. So the teacher is no longer standing at the front for the 1 hour and delivering the lecture. What they're doing is providing some very rich resources that have been designed for instruction and then bringing the students back in so that they can engage in active learning. Relevance of instruction. Again, I can give you a concrete example around this because as somebody I was talking to, we're doing a project with them, hopefully if they get funding, in medicine. Sorry, I'm going to struggle with the details a bit, but basically you have some pharmacology concepts and you have 5 of them and they're delivered in a lecture week by week by week. Students can't see the relevance, they can't make the connections between why is concept 1 related to 2, 3, 4, 5, and why should I care? Like, what does this have to do with me? So we redesigned the instruction in terms of an animation that both links together in the students' minds the different concepts through the 5 weeks, but also shows real-world application and relevance. Confidence, realistic, yeah. This, confidence is actually at the heart of motivational theory. If I flick across all the motivational theories that I know, there are 2 things that students need. One is expectancy. So they have that sense I am able to achieve what I want to achieve. And the other one we've covered, which is value. Why is this important to me? Why would I care? So you need to design the learning environment very, very carefully so that the students are going to see for themselves that they're quite capable of moving through it and achieving the kind of learning outcomes that you would like them to achieve. Making the instruction satisfying by managing intrinsic and extrinsic outcomes. What would I say about this? There is a balance here. I think if you've got to the point where students can see relevance, they know why this learning is important to them, perhaps in terms of being authentically present, they can also see how this relates to the bigger picture of their lives. If they're in year 1 of medicine and they, what's this going to mean to me in year 5 or when I go on my internship or to my greater goals, you're some way towards going to intrinsic motivation. If they think they can achieve it, you're also going some way to intrinsic motivation. But universities are universities. It's a carrot and stick situation. There's also the rewards that come with this. So it's getting a balance between students being intrinsically and extrinsically motivated. In my opinion, ideally, we want the larger percentage, it's Saturday afternoon, the intrinsic motivation I think we would like to see higher. We want students learning because they have a passion for learning and because they want to learn. The rewards are obviously important. They need the piece of paper when they go. But the real flip side that you see of this, we see it at Hong Kong U, and anecdotally when I talk to people at other universities, students are obsessed with grades. And so the focus is actually wholly on the extrinsic rewards. I must get an A for this so that I can then go to the best college, best university, etc. Well, that's one way to go through life. I'm not sure it's the most fulfilling and satisfying, and I don't think it's one that really generates in students the love of learning that will make them good lifelong learners. So I think looking at what's really going to intrinsically motivate our students, why they're here, is a kind of key component of this. There it is in summary, and I'm exactly on time. So I think all I'm saying to you, this is not the definitive answer of how to go about engaging your students in teaching. There are a lot of different models out there, but it is one that's validated in the research, and I think it's one that conceptually is relatively straightforward. You take 4 components and have a think about, what is it that you're doing in your teaching and learning, and how might you implement some of the kind of relatively straightforward principles. So with that, there's the references. Thank you. That's going to draw us to the end of the first part of the workshop. So now we're going to move into kind of practical show and tell plus hands-on activities. And you can come back to this theory, at any point, ask me or some of my staff as you work through. So Darren, over to you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm going to try with